Hello, friends, and welcome to Weekly Witness, Texas Impact's weekly podcast designed to help mainstream Texans of faith understand the legislative process and help you engage with public policy in the great state of Texas. My name is Scott Atnip, your host and Texas Impact's Director of Public Witness, and today we're following up on a conversation from our podcast with B 2 weeks ago in advance of the Texas Medical Board meeting. More than 2,000 Texans of faith signed Texas Impact's petition calling for a rulemaking process to define the abortion exception in Texas state law relating to the life and health of the mother. B talked about Steve and Amy Bresnen, two Austin attorneys and lobbyists with the aptly named BresnenAssociates, who submitted that official petition to the Texas Medical Board. The board, in fact, did begin the rulemaking process and introduced a draft rule for public comment. And today, we're fortunate to have the two petitioners, Amy and Steve Bresnen, for a conversation about that rule, the rulemaking process, and what you can do to help protect the lives and health of Texas women. You can find more information in the show notes and at texasimpact.org. And this seems like a perfect moment to plug Texas Impact's reproductive justice team. Learn more and sign up at texasimpact.org in the Action Center. If you have questions or need more information, you can always reach out at scott@texasimpact.org. So with that, I hope you enjoyed this week's conversation with Steve and Amy Bresnen. Joining us for today's conversation are the co-principals of BresnenAssociates and Texas Capitol Insiders, two of our favorite humans inside the Capitol, Steve and Amy Bresnen. Steve and Amy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you.
This is really timely because we recorded an episode before the Texas Medical Board meeting 2 weeks ago with B, and so are really looking forward to the follow-up conversation today. Amy, we're going to start with you because you and Steve were the ones who filed the petition for the Texas Medical Board to consider rulemaking for the exception to the Texas abortion ban related to the life and health of the mother. So Amy, let's start with you. Why was that so important for you two?
Well, I have friends in their lower 30s, mid 30s who are wanting to start having a family. And to be honest, they are scared of what will happen to them if there's a situation where the life of the mother is at risk. They want some sort of clarity and certainty that in that situation that they're going to be okay, that they can go on to try again to have a child without their fertility being at risk.
There have certainly been some high-profile cases in the news over the course of the last few months, but this is an issue that everyone should be concerned about, right?
I completely agree. This affects men just as much as it does women. It affects young children who are hoping to have siblings one day, just as much as it does men and women. This is a subject matter that is quite possibly one of the most personal areas of law that the legislature and courts and of course the executive branch deal with.
We talk a lot about the mothers, and you talked about men and families, everybody, but I assume doctors especially would really like some clarity in this realm, right?
Doctors are people too, absolutely.
What we know from the lawsuits and from the public hearing at the medical board is that there are many doctors who don't know how to go forward. And if they make a mistake in this area, they can go to the penitentiary for 99 years. Their license can be revoked. They can get a $100,000 civil fine, and they can be subjected to endless litigation. So women depend on physicians in order to save their lives and their health. And so this is important for wide-ranging reasons.
What are y'all hearing from doctors in the state of Texas about this so far?
Well, I, like every woman in Texas, I have a gynecologist, and they're not shy about letting their patients know that they're very unhappy with the status quo and again, are fearful of the repercussions for providing adequate health care, given any certain situation. And I encourage women to talk to their gynecologist about how they feel about the Texas law with regard to this issue, because my experience has been they are not shy about letting their patients know that they would like to see clarity.
We had Bea on the episode 2 weeks ago, and she talked through the rulemaking process and why it's important. So we don't need to go through step by step what the rulemaking process is today. If folks are interested, they can go back and listen to that episode. But what are you hoping comes from this process with the Texas Medical Board?
Well, physicians need prospective guidance. When they look at a patient and begin to diagnose her situation, they need to know what the rules say about what they're going to do going forward. The proposed rules are retrospective. They tell you, document this, document that, and you don't have anything to document until the abortion has been performed. So that's not what physicians are needing. They're needing some firm ground to stand on that does a lot more than this proposed rule by the board, which in fact does nothing.
And to buttress Steve's point, there are some definitions. Take the definition of ectopic pregnancy, which the board has in its proposed rule, but it's cross-referencing the definition of ectopic pregnancy from Chapter 245 of the Health and Safety Code, rather than the definition that is located in Chapter 74 of the Civil Practices and Remedies Code. The reason why this is important is because the definition located in the Civil Practice and Remedies Code is a more complete description or definition of ectopic pregnancy, whereas the one in Chapter 245 only speaks to ectopic pregnancies located outside of the uterus. That does not account for every ectopic pregnancy known to the medical world.
I think it's important to emphasize how little what they've done actually accomplishes. The rule is 733 words long. Over half of those words are just repeating verbatim existing statutes. Another 44 words says in a long-winded fashion, an abortion has to comply with the law. Our friends, the physicians, probably don't need to be told that. And then a remaining 50 or 60 words says we're going to follow the standard rulemaking complaint procedure of existing law, which physicians are already familiar with. That does nothing. It gives no guidance whatsoever on a prospective basis so that a physician can know before they go forward where the solid ground is.
So what happens if those changes aren't made? What happens if this isn't amended?
We'd be really essentially right where we are today. The statutes that are repeated in the proposed rule would still be in the law. Physicians would still be required to document their treatment of patients. The complaint procedures would still be the same as they are now. There's really nothing. We're not just making sales talk here. There's nothing in this rule that gives any guidance, and there are parts of it that ignore, as Amy said, they ignore the most current definition of ectopic pregnancy. They ignore the 1925 law that is not repeated in the proposed rule. It's still in effect, arguably. And so it's really, if it's a starting point, our petition started at 110%, and their proposed rule starts at 0%.
So if you look at the back half of our petition, it provides a mechanism for how we would deal, or how the state should deal with frivolous complaints with regard to physicians who do perform legal abortions. We think that the procedure that we've laid out in our petition provides much more protection than what the proposed TMB rule provides. And what I don't understand about that is, you would think that the Texas Medical Board would have an interest in protecting its members. And so why they didn't take the alternative, meaning our petition, why they didn't choose the alternative that provides the most protection for their members, over theirs, which should be baffling to every physician in the state.
The one piece of good news that I see coming from all of this, and y'all can push back if you want, but the process has now started, right? And so there is an opportunity for listeners, for people throughout Texas, for Texans of Faith, to have their voice heard on what happens next. What do you hope listeners will do, and why is it important?
Well, we hope that they will do two things. We know that Texas Impact has a petition circulating, and a couple of thousand people have already signed it. That's a wonderful thing. And this way people get educated on it. They come to grips with the importance of it, and they actually do something, which is what we set about to cause with our petition. The second thing they can do is file public comments. I'm sure Texas Impact will provide them with the link to the agency website. The rules have not actually been published yet. Should be published a week from tomorrow in the Texas Register, but the agency's indicated they'll go ahead and start taking comments using that form that's on their links to their website. The best way to make rules is to be specific. If person reads them and says, I don't see anything new here, that can be specific enough and accurate to boot. On the other hand, the most effective comments can be suggesting specific provisions for the rule. In our instance, we want to re-up on our idea that there should be some acknowledgement of the kinds of conditions that women confront. We know it cannot be exhaustive. Medicine's a complicated thing. We didn't draft it as exhaustive in our proposed rule. The board is trying to stay away from that, and we understand their reasons. But I think this is where the rubber meets the road in terms of prospective guidance for physicians.
If the Texas Medical Board, and we've listened to the concerns from doctors with regard to a list of conditions, and I guess I would say to that, if you're not going to provide a non-exhaustive list of conditions on top of the fact that you're not going to provide doctors with more protection who may face criminal or civil trial or find themselves in that type of litigation, if you're not going to give a list of conditions, then you can at least buff up the part with regard to frivolous complaints against physicians. But what they have done, they've not taken any list of conditions on top of not providing adequate protection for doctors.
Steve mentioned Texas Impact's petition, and we do have more than 2,000 Texans of Faith who have signed that so far, and so we'll be encouraging them to fill out public comments. For those who are listening, if you have signed our petition, that doesn't mean you've completed your homework. You now need to go fill out the public comment form as well. Can y'all talk to us about the rulemaking process and why it's important that these comments are submitted?
Sure. Well, the heart of it is that the agency must respond in writing to every substantive comment that's made. If 5 people made the same comment, they can group them, but they have to reply in writing and say why they accepted the comment, rejected the comment, or made changes. Maybe not the same change that the comment sought, but, some variation. So it really puts an agency on the spit to have to say why they did not do something. What results from that is in effect, a legislative history. It can be used later on when there are arguments by lawyers like us about what the rule actually means, because you have something in writing from the agency that's explaining what they did and why they did it. So it's really, government is frequently unresponsive to people. But in this particular instance, it's a way to make government be responsive. Agencies have ways of dodging responsiveness, so we're not naive about that. But this is your best shot. And if you want to have a conversation with your government and have them speak back, this is a place to do it.
And we'll be sharing that link in the show notes and hopefully everywhere else that Texas Impact is able to get to folks. He says, looking at the producer, Davey, right now. But assuming that all of our folks are going to go do that here soon or in the next week or two, what advice do you have for them in filling out that form other than being substantive? Any other comments you've made so far?
I would highly recommend that people go back and listen to the testimony from the hearing on Friday. Some of the participants alluded to the idea that there are alternatives to abortion that would suffice as maternal health care, such as providing C-sections over abortions, even in the case of a fetus being non-viable, which would put the mother's life more at risk if there were a complication with the C-section that was not going to result in a viable fetus or a healthy child. People should look into that testimony and the people behind those comments and figure out if this is really where they want their state to be. Do you want your state to provide cesarean sections on women who are carrying a non-viable fetus and place her life more at risk? And they admit that it places the mother's life at more of a risk.
So let me give you some specific comments that people could include, and y'all can reach out to us if anybody needs more specific information about this. One is that all of the findings of the Texas Supreme Court in Kate Cox's case should be included in the rules. For example, the court specifically held that the statute does not require that the woman be facing imminent death. It's life-threatening, not that you have to be on the brink of death before an abortion can be performed.
Which all of the witnesses agreed that was true, that there is no immediacy requirement. That was very interesting to learn, that we are at least all on the same page with regard to that issue.
There are 5 such elements. Another one is not everybody has to agree for the judgment to be reasonable medical judgment, the statutory term. The entirety of medicine doesn't have to agree in the course chosen. That's a range of decision making. And the rules should emphasize that. And that's another element of the court finding in the Cox case. Another specific comment is that the rule should clearly delineate between life-threatening conditions and those conditions that pose a serious risk of substantial impairment to the woman's major bodily functions.
And at the hearing last Friday, everyone seemed to agree that fertility was a major bodily function.
So by way of explanation, the statute's a bit confusing. This is why you sometimes need agencies to interpret. So the statute can be read in a way that says that the potential loss of fertility, a major bodily function, has to be life-threatening. Well, that makes no sense. People are threatened with loss of their fertility or major bodily functions without it being life-threatening. But the rules don't make it clear that these are two different things here. And it's really the only way the statute makes good sense. So very specifically, someone can make a specific comment. The rules do not clearly delineate between life-threatening conditions and conditions that threaten a major bodily function of a pregnant woman.
Y'all, this is a really hard topic and one that I know Texans of faith throughout the state have really struggled with how to respond to what our state government is doing. So we really appreciate you two taking a leadership role in trying to make some progress. I wonder if there are any closing thoughts or any other advice you can give before we close out today.
My advice would be to pay attention to this issue. This is probably going to end up back at the legislature, especially if the Texas Medical Board does not try to alleviate some of the concerns. And I know that everyone thinks that Texas is already at the bottom, and we are at the bottom, but things can always get worse. You need to pay attention to what is going on in your state with regard to this issue. The state is only as strong as the people who speak up.
So I agree completely with Amy that our legislators need to know that this proposed rule does nothing. Your constituency should communicate to their legislator in a way that's respectful that the proposed rules do not solve the problem. And if the board doesn't get there and solve the problem or do a much better job, then they'll have to act. The other thing I'd like to say is it's organizations like Texas Impact that give a voice to these kinds of issues. They're giving a voice to us, and you're giving it to the thousands of people who you interact with. There's no more important contribution that can be made to public life than to give people a voice and have their voice stand out. So we're very grateful to Texas Impact for what you're doing.
Thank you.
All right, friends, we have our homework for this week. Y'all, this is important. And so let's find the time over the coming weeks to make a difference, to invite our friends to share those comments and see if we can make a difference for the lives of Texas women, Texas families, and everyone. Steve, Amy, thank you so much for the time today. I appreciate all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this week's conversation with Amy and Steve Bresnen, and I hope you'll take seriously the opportunity to engage in the public comment process. They talked about how important that process is. I said a few weeks ago during the original episode on this topic, we all want more robust changes, but these incremental rulemaking changes are vital and can save women's lives. So I hope we can count on you to participate in the process. And then we'll keep working for all of the big changes necessary to create a more just and equitable Texas. For your tools to do all of that, check out our website at texasimpact.org, join a team, get engaged in the Texas Faith Votes campaign, find out how to do it all at texasimpact.org. While you're there, I hope you'll take a moment to sign up to be a member of Texas Impact. Your membership supports this podcast and all of the work to engage Texans of faith to advocate for a more just and equitable Texas. If you have questions about any of it, please reach out. You can reach me at scott@texasimpact.org. So with that, I think it's time to close out this episode. So remember, the world needs Texans of faith active and engaged. So let's get to work.
Weekly Witness is hosted by Scott Atnet, engineered and produced by David Fasalo. Our executive producer is B. Moorhead. The opinions expressed on Weekly Witness are those of Texas Impact and our guests, and do not necessarily reflect the views of our sponsors. Weekly Witness is a product of Texas Impact, people of faith working for justice. Visit us online at texasimpact.org.